there, and welcome. Recently, a listener of That Shakespeare Life wrote to me and asked the question, Cassidy, do you know whether there's a Tudor equivalent of the game Red Light, Green Light? I thought that was a fascinating question. You know I love Tudor games. So, whether there was one that matched up with this version of the popular children's outdoor game, though, I really wasn't sure. Spurred on by my listeners' confidence in my ability to find out, however, I dove into the research. And here's what I found out. So there are actually two red light, green light games. The first I'm going to share with you, I had not heard of until I Googled red light, green light. And it brought up, so the listener who wrote me specifically called the game Red Light, Green Light 1, 2, 3. And I had not heard of a game that added that 1, 2, 3 at the end, so I looked it up online to see what it was. The search actually pulled up a card game called Red Light, Green Light 1, 2, 3. And originally, I thought my listener query was about this card game, so I set about finding a Tudor equivalent to the Red Light, Green Light card game. Essentially, this card game gets distilled down to a short definition of everybody gets dealt a set of cards and a discard pile is set in the middle. One card is turned up, and then all the players proceed to play upon that turned up card in a sequential order, with the goal being the first player to run out of cards wins the game. So that left me with main criteria being it needed to involve multiple players, deal a hand, play proceeds sequentially, and the goal is to run out of cards. Now, of course, most Tudor card games are betting games, or possibly trick-taking games, or games where you're trying to earn a certain number of points. Think about the card game Naughty, for example, where you're trying to get to 31, or the game 1 in 30. You know, it's all about points. So it was really hard to find a card game where the idea was to run out of cards instead of it being a game where you wanted to be the one that gained all the cards. But I did manage to find a game called Old Comet. Now, it was originally a French game called Manie, and it was from France, but most resources about this game rather unhelpfully state things like, this is a very old French game, without any kind of indication of what very old might be. I found several resources that that's all they did. It's very old. Okay, well, I kind of need a date because my listener is writing a book and she wants to put the game in the Tudor period. So I need to know exactly when this game was, and very old just didn't cut it. But I was able to find that the game Manie was renamed Old Comet in the year 1682. So we're getting really close, okay? And presumably, if it's very old and we know it was renamed in 1682, it's plausible to think that very old as a description would carry it back farther than the 80 years it would need to go to fall into the Tudor period. So I'm going to call Manie plausibly inclusive of the Tudor period. You could make the argument that what we do know about the date of this game, it probably was played in some way in the Tudor period. But I was not certain about the date, and I didn't want to suggest a game that would have created her characters having to participate in an anachronism. So I was like, okay, well, let's check with someone that I know is going to have some ideas here. The king of historic card games himself, David Parlett. And you may remember David from his visit with us on the podcast to talk about card games from Shakespeare's lifetime. David was given an honorary doctorate for his work into the history of card games. And seriously, I think he knows all there is to know about card games. He was definitely the person to ask about whether there was a Tudor analog for red light, green light. So I emailed him, and in his reply, he graciously suggested a wonderful card game that was not only from Shakespeare's lifetime, but it's actually mentioned in Shakespeare's plays. In the play Two Noble Kinsmen, Act 2, Scene 1, Emilia is talking with a woman, and she says, "I am wondrous merry-hearted, I could laugh now." And the woman replies, "I could lie down, I'm sure." And this exchange is a joke on the card game Laugh and Lie Down, because in the order of play for Laugh and Lie Down, players sequentially play their cards until they can't discard anymore. They fall out of sequence. They don't have anything in their hand to play. And when that happens, they have to throw down all their cards, their turn is over, and the rest of the players laugh at them. The goal of the game is to be the last one with the cards, so it's kind of a reverse red light, green light game. And so it could be an analog in that sense. Now, after I looked into both of these card games, however, I figured out that my friend wasn't actually asking about card games at all. And you've probably already figured this out, but she was asking about the outdoor playground game, Red Light, Green Light. Now, truthfully, it was the addition of one, two, three at the end that threw me because when she asked originally and I was reading through it, I went, Red Light, Green Light. I played that as a kid. I know what game she's talking about. But the one, two, three after red light, green light made me think she must have been talking about something else because, at least here in the US, we played two playground games as kids. One of them was red light, green light. The other one was Red Rover. And, we played Blind Man's Bluff also. So don't come at me about, no, we played more than two. I mean, these were the two playground games that I had thought of. I had heard of red light, green light. I just wasn't sure that's what she was talking about. But anyway, I figured it out. And red light, green light was, if you're not familiar, this is the game when one person is the leader and everyone else forms a line behind the leader. And there's a big gap. So you've got the leader is here and several feet behind them is a line of children here. And the leader stands out in front of the line with their back to all of the kids and they'll shout, green light, and everyone has to run forward. Then the leader will spontaneously whirl around, look at the kids and yell, red light, at which point everybody has to freeze where they are. If they fall out of position or take any further step forward, they're out. The leader repeats this sequence of back to the people saying green light, facing them saying red light, until one of the runners is able to reach the leader and tag them. The person who tags the leader replaces the leader and the game starts over. But now I'm curious though. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever played this game? Did you play it as a kid on the playground? And especially important here is, did you call it red light, green light, one, two, three? Or did you just call it red light, green light? Whatever it's called, this version of red light, green light was a game that my friend is actually wondering about. So once we sorted that out, I went looking for some options for what an analog for this game might be. In Tudor England, there were a variety of chase, leap, and tag type children's games, a lot of which are vaguely mentioned, but no real details on the rules or firm dates about when they existed are there. This is like a hazard of game history as it happens, because not a lot of people sat down and wrote down all the rules. But in one article that I read, they said, and I'm going to quote them here, and I will link you this article below, but they said, crossing a space of ground from refuge to refuge while avoiding a catcher is recorded in medieval times. It included a ritual in which the chased and the chaser chant a rhyme before the run takes place, and both game and rhyme were still in use in Tudor times because they're recorded again by the Oxford scholar Gerald Langbang, who was reminiscing about his school days, which happened in the 1620s. And then they list off this rhyme where the people being chased will say something sing-songy and the people doing the chasing will say something sing-songy, and they go back and forth. It was actually a lot like Red Rover, and so and forth, right over. And then that, you've got the two lines and the kids trade places, if you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you're really lost right now, but work with me. It's the idea of having essentially teams and they taunt each other before the chase happens. This was an example of rhyming happening alongside a chasing game, which was getting close to red light, green light, but it didn't have the one person in charge, everybody else running towards them factor that I felt like the red light, green light game was based on. So I kept looking. Now, Shakespeare's Cymbeline refers to, quote, lads more like to run the country base, end quote. Now he's talking about they'd rather run the country base than to commit slaughter in battle. But the phrase, the country base, talks about a game that was sometimes called base, sometimes called prisoner's base. And it was played a lot like Capture the Flag. At least it reads like Capture the Flag. It was where players took turns running from one area of safety to another while trying to not get tagged in between. And some examples of the game Prison Break will also call it Barley Break. And Lampum's Quarterly talks about this game in this way. There would be 6 participants, 3 of each sex, so 3 boys and 3 girls, a couple of whom, so one of the boys and one of the girls, would stand in the middle, and the middle area was called Hell. And the game involved them catching all of the others. And once you got caught, the captives then joined the leaders in trying to catch everyone else. The word barley appears to mean an immunity that was given or could be gained on a particular spot. Other active games recorded before 1600 include the game King by Your Leave and Blind Man's Bluff, both of which involved a player being blindfolded. Now, the King by Your Leave was a game that children had where one person sat blindfolded in the middle and they stayed that way until everyone else playing the game hid, and then they take off their blindfold and go and try and find everybody. It was a lot like hide and seek, I guess, but there's a few more rules. Like the Latin dictionary from 1572 states that in the King by Your Leave game, the person playing the king goes to seek the people that are hiding. And if any of the people who are hiding are able to slip away from their hiding place and sit where the king was sitting in the middle, then that person gets to be king. That makes King by Your Leave a really big contender to me for an analog to Red Light, Green Light. And I like this one especially because we can date it to 1572, which is boom, right in the middle of the Tudor period. So it's perfect in terms of the right time. It does involve one leader trying to keep everyone else from making it to them. And if they make it, then they take over. So in my mind, this game, The King by Your Leave, is the one I'm going to pick as what I'm recommending to my author friend to include in her book. She's writing a book about the Tudor period and she wants to have a game that would work well here. And that one, to me, is the biggest analog. I will mention as a second option, I think the game of Prisoner's Base comes in close because it's a form of tag that allows players to run back to a safe point, and that does have that start-stop element. So it might be a close second, but my official recommendation is going to be King by Your Leave, which we can date to 1572 as being the best analog for the red light, green light playground game we know today. So what do you think? Do you think that this game functions as a good analog for red light, green light? Do you think there's a better game that might work better that you want to suggest? Please tell me about it all in the comments. That's it for this week. Thank you for watching. I'm Cassidy Cash, and I hope you learned something new about the Bard. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.